I do want to take a minute and welcome everyone watching online or listening to this on our podcast. That continues to grow. We continue to have people download our podcast and listen to it every week. I want to say thank you to all of you who have been sharing our podcast or inviting people, especially if you're here today and you were here because someone invited you, somebody loved you and cared about you and wants you to experience something that that they've experienced when it comes to God and what God's doing in their life here at our city church. So if you invited someone, thank you for being at what we're all about. And again, welcome to everyone who's listening, even maybe for the first time today. We're going to talk about something today that I think that our culture really gets it wrong when it comes to this, and church culture and outside of church culture. I would say outside culture has a real broken way of looking at the subject of sex. And then I would say that church culture has been way behind on doing it in a way that's relevant, speaking about it in a way that's relevant. And I think that's been a tragic mistake that over the last 50 years, the church was really silent on this issue. And then when we did have something to say about it, we were always really negative and getting down on people and bashing them for making mistakes, which then gave the church kind of like this scary position when you were going through decision making or when you've made mistakes or when you're trying to figure out what you believe. It was really not a safe place to process that information. And we at our city church want to reclaim what we believe the Bible has to offer on this subject, which I believe that the God of creation created this subject, and he created sex to be powerful and amazing in the context he made it for. And we want to talk about what all that means today. But today, I do believe that it's going to be, basically this is like my version as a pastor. There are certain subjects I just think as a pastor, whether I like it or not, I need to talk about to have a healthy church. I can't avoid this subject. It's not always comfortable studying for it. There's going to be things I'm going to say today that are going to be challenging for some of you. I'm going to say some things today that are going to be eye-opening for some of you, and it's going to connect dots, and there's going to be healing in your heart that will take place as well today. And I hope today to also encourage and inspire you to live out the life that God has for you and that he's created for you. And basically, I'm going to give you the sex talk today that your parents never did. Okay, because most of us had a really poor example or bad experience when it came to the sex talk. It was just kind of like, hey, boy, get in the truck. We're going to go for a drive. It's like, and it's, and some of us got told about sex prematurely, before we should have been. I know in my own experience, I think I was 6 or 7 years old when our next door neighbor, he used to look at pornographic magazines, and we were just playing around in their house and just being boys. I had 2 brothers, and I was the middle, and we found them. And that was our exposure to sex. That was our, oh, okay, so there's a lot more body parts going on than what I see when I go to school. And all of a sudden, and that led, and there was a 7-year-old, 8-year-old kid down the street where I grew up, and he brought over a hustler one day and started giving me a quiz on what all the parts were. And I was 7, and that's a real sad and tragic part of my own story, my own narrative. And so this subject's always been really important to me because, God's had to really help just me be rescued from the early attack of the enemy to really destroy my life. And so today, if you come to this subject with any, kind of nervousness or worry, anxiety or fear, I just want to calm that today and let you know that this is going to be a safe discussion. It's going to be an honest one. I think it needs to be honest. I don't think that safety means you don't have to hear something honest that you don't want to hear. That's not the definition of safety in our church. Safety means that if you hear it, it should come from a place of love. And it should come from a place of someone that's I'm here to walk this journey on earth together. And we're not all going to figure it out, and we're not all going to agree, and that's okay. A church doesn't need to agree on everything. I think we need to agree on the main thing, which is who gets us to connect with the Father in heaven, and that's Jesus. And so as long as we can come together on that, man, we can, and even if you don't agree with that, you still come hang out with us because we're fun. So, we want everyone here to learn at their own pace and to be with that. So I want to take a moment and talk to single people for a quick second because I want to talk to you about what I think all of us kind of know intuitively as single people, but our culture never talks about. And that's what this message is about. This message I'm going to tell you today is not marketable. You don't want to watch a movie about this message. It's not interesting, but it is true. What I'm going to tell you today is true. It's none of those other things, but it's going to be truth. If you miss this, you're going to set yourself up for disaster later if you're single. And I want you to hear it today. I want you to understand this subject. The myth is where I'm going to start today. And this is the myth that our culture tells us. And you're going to hear me say this a lot today, but here's the myth that is not true, but it is what we're told in our culture, and it's the way our culture treats this subject. It's how our culture discusses this subject, sings about this subject, writes movies about this subject. Everything that you see in culture about the subject of sex is around this myth, and this is what it is. Sex is only physical. Sex is only physical. It's just a physical thing, nothing else. It's just physical. That is the way that this subject gets handled. And that position is not true. And the idea is, as long as nobody gets hurt, right? Nobody gets an STD, nobody gets pregnant, it's all good. It's just physical. It's kind of like touch football. Well, actually, it's a lot more like tackle football, and you stay on the ground a little longer. But you understand where I'm going with that. But the truth is this, is that sex, it's not just physical. If you treat sex like it's just physical, you will hurt yourself. And eventually, you hurt your partner, and then it's too late to not have damage. You have it. And single people, I want to tell you this. Some of the married people that are sitting around you right now, or that you know if you're listening to this on the podcast or watching it online, the married people that you know in your life, or some of you are sitting around right now, are dealing with the consequences of poor sexual decisions. And they don't maybe understand the connection is between what they did when they were younger and the consequences they are suffering now. They can't connect the dots, but I want to connect the dots for you as a single person. I want to be able to do this for you, and I'm going to do this to start by asking you a few questions. And I want to tell you that whenever I handle this subject, I try to come up with a few questions that really help us understand this. I don't want to do this. I don't like asking these questions, and I'm not doing it for any type of a personal agenda. But I believe as I ask these questions that they're going to surface some things that some of you have not thought about for a while. It's going to be questions that I don't have the answers to, and we won't agree on the answers to these questions anyways. But I do want you to know that my only point in asking these questions is not to cause you pain, but to help us understand the gravity of the idea that sex is not just physical. It is connected to your personhood, and it is connected to your soul in such a powerful way that if you treat it like it is just physical, you hurt yourself in the deepest way possible. And I don't want you to do that as a pastor. I don't want you to have pain that you don't need to have. And I want to save you from that if you're single today. And I want to talk to all of us then about what do we do and why this comes from. And here's some of those questions to help us, I hope, be able to understand the gravity of that idea that it's not just physical. Why is it that it is so hard for somebody that was sexually abused as a child to just shake that off as an adult? Why can't they just dismiss it? Like, why is it that they just can't be like, things happen, people make mistakes. Adults don't do all the things right. And someone might say, well, it's because an authority figure, violated trust or whatnot, or, they were betrayed by an authority figure. And the reality is that every child at some point is betrayed by an authority figure. So that's really not the reason. Question 2, why is it that rape is more devastating to a woman than just simply being beat up? Have you ever sat with, and I have, women that have been raped or beat up? The difference between them is stark. A woman will report being beat up, stats tell us, much more often over and against rape. But rape is something she feels like she has to keep secret. And it's because sex is not just physical. Question 3, why is it that the men with the deepest sexual issues have a uninvolved or a distant father relationship? What is the connection between a family issue and a person's sexual issue? And the last question I have is, why is it that the most of our deep regrets are sexual? Whenever someone ever sits you down or says, hey, I need to talk with you, and I'm going to tell you something, I need to tell you something that I've never told anybody else. It's never about some lie they told. It's never about the time they backed into someone's car and didn't leave a note. It's always about something sexual that they've done that nobody knows. And our culture wants us to believe this lie, but they want us to believe it's just physical. But clearly, just going through those few questions, it's not just physical. It's a deeply, profoundly connected part of our soul and our being and our existence. And it affects so much more than we recognize or give it the understanding of. And when we try to treat it to that and we fight against the reality of it, we end up treating something very valuable as if it's not. Some of you might have heard of a Stradivarius violin instrument. a Stradivarius violin. I think the most it's ever been sold for, there's multiple, they were made hundreds of years ago. Those of you that love like classical music, or you understand the violin or this fine instrument, it was sold, the most one was sold in 2011 for $16 million, right? It's obviously expensive. It's a priceless and a rare instrument. And I would never just like walk out here with a Stradivarius and open it up and just like toss it out into the crowd and be like, hey, you guys take a look at it for a while and pass it around, kind of just, see what it is and kind of, see how it works and get a handle on it. And then, when you guys are all done passing around or whatever, I guess if I want it, I'll come back and get it. Like I would never treat something that valuable with that type of disregard. And yet, we do it all the time with our sexuality. We take something super valuable and open it up and then hand it out and pass it around and entertain the idea of how many different experiences we want other people to have with this super precious, valuable instrument. And the reality is that we are much more valuable to God than an instrument. And we are more fragile than an instrument. And that instrument can be replaced. You can't. You are irreplaceable when it comes to that. The reason sexuality is more than just physical is because God created it to be a expression, a imagery of intimacy. Intimacy is something I want you to know the definition of that we're working with today. This is my working definition. Intimacy is to know and to be fully known. That's intimacy. God wanted us to have the ability to experience that with each other, and he wanted it to be an expression of what he hopes for us to be able to experience with him when it comes to connection, to being fully known, soul to soul, to be known and to know fully. That's God's desire for us in relationship with him. And he wanted us to be able to experience what that connection with God would be like. And there was no better way that God could create. And there is no other way that he did create where you feel that fully known and to be fully known connection, that intimacy. That is what God wanted, soul to soul with God. And ultimately, it was the ultimate expression of intimacy, sex. There's passionate, fearless, know me as I am, a coming together experience. It will be powerful, he says, and I'm going to give it to them as a gift. And I hope they're careful with it because it's fragile and it can be broken. I'll say a few more things to single people and then talk to everyone. You know people who have broken this, and you know men who cannot find intimacy in sex because they have broken it. You know women who have become numb to it or afraid of it or guilty. You know men that just, can't connect. Just no matter how much they want to connect, they just can't seem to connect. It's not intimacy. And the thing that, go ahead and turn this back down wherever you just moved it to. If you don't mind, bring it back up. Just leave it where it was. I'm fine with it. Thanks. The reality that we have is that people in that position that you know about, men who cannot connect or women who are numb to it or afraid of it or feel guilt about it, whatever these things are that the men and women you know that are married have it, once upon a time they believe the lie that sex is just physical and they hurt themselves. And you get a chance to get it right if you're single. You get a chance to do it the way God created for it to be done in your life. You get a chance to know that it is powerful and fragile and you can handle it with care. And when you do this, it is beautiful and it is powerful and it is incredible and it is amazing. And the Bible talks about this. In fact, 2,000 years ago, somebody already said what I just said to you to another group of people that didn't really know about it at all either. And if you're not religious, here's what I know is I cannot convince you, but I want to at least raise a thought to you. I at least want to raise a thought to you that you would recognize something about this. Because historically, religion has not celebrated marital fidelity. And if you don't know what marital fidelity is, it means that it's two people being committed to just those, to each other. It's two people saying, hey, it's me and you, and that's it. Marital fidelity is not something historically that religion has modeled or celebrated or taught. And when Moses, in the Old Testament of our Bible, back thousands of years ago, when he went up to the mountain after the people of Israel were coming out of Egypt slavery and they're getting ready to go into their promised land, when Moses went up the mountain, God said, come up here. I want to talk to you. I want to tell you how to become the people. You've only been used to being slaves. I want you to learn how to become a people that are after my own heart. And I want to teach you how to be my people. They didn't know how to do that. Moses goes up. And when he went up the mountainside, the pagan religions around him did not celebrate fidelity. So nobody was just, hey, I'm only going to be with you. It was just, I'm going to be with whoever I want to be with, however I want to be with, whenever I want to be with. And that's what we're going to do. And that's the way religions actually were. So if you were Moses and you were trying to make up the law, I mean, how would you have written it? Especially if you were like you at, 18. Right? Like, and you would have written it like every other cult leader has ever come up with, right? We read these stories of cults in the news, right? How every other cult leader, when they come up with their own written law, in every cult that we are familiar with, some guy twisted it up so that he can have sex with as many people as he wants to. And here's the reality. When men manufacture religion, women become a commodity. When men manufacture religion, women become a commodity. Yet Moses came down thousands of years before Jesus. And he comes down the mountain and God speaks to Moses about what he wants his law, his rule to be. And Moses comes down and says, one man and one woman for life. That's the law. And then Jesus echoed that when Jesus was on the earth. And after Jesus said it, Paul comes to the city. Paul is the apostle that Jesus ascends, and he commissions Paul, I want you to start churches and spread the message of my hope and my forgiveness and my love and my grace to people and my way of living. So Paul starts planting churches, and he comes to this one city called Corinth. And Corinth was crazy. I mean, it literally makes Las Vegas look like it's just a bunch of nuns, like at a monastery. Okay, Corinth was wilding out. Like what you wanted, you could find. What you didn't even know you would want, you could find. Stuff would find you and like get crazy. Like Corinth was wilding out. So Paul comes to Corinth and he saw the way the people were living and realized that nobody had told them what sex was designed for. And I love this about Paul, is that Paul doesn't come in heavy-handed and start bashing the Corinthians and letting them all know, like, you're all going to hell, and like, this is what's wrong with you, and these Corinthians, and that's what's wrong, and I can't believe you and all. He doesn't do that. Paul comes and he sees, oh, you know what you're living like? You're living like people who have not been told the way it's supposed to go. And I think that our city church, that's the way we should handle this subject too. I don't think we should come at it from a position, especially if a part of the reason that people haven't heard the church's perspective or a biblical perspective is because the church has done such a terrible job at presenting it. Like when the church has done such a poor job of actually presenting in a way that is engaging and honest and transparent and speaks of the beauty and the mystery and the wonder of what God intended for us and the portrait that it is of connection with him. If we haven't done that, we've just shamed people all along. It's no wonder they've not heard our perspective. And then we're going to judge them because they haven't heard God's version of it when we're part to play in why they haven't heard it. No, not at our city church. I understand that. I know my role and I know what part our city church plays in our culture and in our day. And in the fact that, you know what? People need to hear what God has to say, and we need to say it to them as if you might have a good reason why you've never heard it from church. Either you didn't go to a church that did it right, or you went to a church that straight did it wrong. They either ignored it, never talked about it, or the way they talked about it was so condemning and shameful that there's no honest dialogue. I want to be a place today to begin this discussion and hopefully bring some healing and do it the way Paul did, because Paul comes in and he's like, look, Paul's not some narrow-minded religious guy. No, he is trying to bring truth to a broken world. And here's how he says it. In 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 18, he starts off and says this. He says, verse 18, sorry, we're following there we go. Okay, all right. It starts and it says the first couple words, flee from sexual immorality. First thing he says right off the bat. So he says this, don't try to manage it, flee from it. Run from it. I don't know if you've ever been out in the wild. Like I went on a African safari one time, and like I think the guy that we were with, like he did drugs, and like we were stupid too. We were young and like all like, hey man, let's get like on the wild side, right? We're dumb. We're like city boys from the Bay thinking like the wild side of the city is equivalent to the wild side of Africa. And I want you to know the wild side of Africa wins. Man, we're like, let's go see some lions, man. No, like, let's not go see some lions unless the gates are big and like we're safe. We got out there, man. I'll never forget it. There was this big old elephant, dude. And I lost the video footage. I lost it or I threw it away because, man, when he started running at me, I don't remember. I started praying in another language, and I started like, and then I said some other stuff that I know in this language. And like, it was like, it all came out at one shot. This dude was charging at us. There was nothing that would stop this massive, humongous elephant from destroying our whole, like our little Lego toy to him. It was like he could just destroy it. And it was interesting to me as I saw that, I was just like, I would do all I could to run from this, to flee, to get away as fast as I could. That's the word that Paul uses. He says, run away, flee from sexual immorality. Put that back up for me. And he says, and then in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, he defines sexual immorality as all sex outside of marriage. That's how he'll describe it in the very next chapter, all sex outside of marriage. Now, he continues, all sins a person commits. Now, he's about to tell us right now, like, what it is that, like, we discovered through the questions I asked earlier. He's about to tell us that sexual sin is unlike any other sin, not because God hates you, and not because he wants to judge you more, or not because he wants to send you to hell, which I am so sorry to hear that, like, that is how the message might have came across to you. That's not why God says that. But he does say it because of the depth to which it injures the offender, and in many cases, the offended. He goes on, all other sins a person commits are outside the body, but whoever sins sexually sins against their own body. Now, this is an interesting take, especially in the day and age where the Corinthians were living. They were just like, man, we're just out here getting loose, doing it with whoever we want to do it with, and it's just like a free-for-all. And Paul comes in and is like, hey, guys, look, you don't know this, but this thing is way more valuable, way more precious, way more important than we're acting like right now. And I want you to know that we do a lot of stuff that's wrong, right? But when we sin sexually, dude, this isn't just a sin you offend or hurt someone else. You actually end up causing damage to your own self, which is huge, transformative information in its day and age, especially in the culture and the context to which he speaks it. He says, when you sin sexually, you hurt yourself at the deepest level imaginable. And in some cases, you will carry it with you throughout the rest of your life. The thing that is so powerful in bonding marriages can also flip your life upside down if you don't handle it properly. And no sin is like sexual sin when it comes to the ongoing consequences in a person's life. Let's take a look at something else Paul wrote just a couple verses earlier in verse 16. He says this, do you not know that he who unites himself with a prostitute is one with her in body? Now let's stop right there. The Corinthians would have thought, nobody is uniting, Paul, okay? We're just having sex. There's no uniting going on. It's just two bodies, two people, just enjoying a moment's pleasure. I mean, come on, dude. This is, the words you're using are just, too much. And the word that is used, that Paul uses, is like this word, like glue. It's like glue, super glue, that's intertwined and permanent. That's the word he uses. It's like, no, it's permanent, it's intertwined, it's super glue, like it's going to cement. And I know some of us is like, well, I wasn't uniting with anybody. It was just a one-time thing. Paul is saying that there is a sense of permanence, and it is not just physical. You were designed to become one with one. And when you continue to become one with person after person after person after person, you damage your intimacy factor. You damage your intimacy factor. Over time, you will become numb to connection and to intimacy. And some of you know what that's like. You know what it's like you maybe didn't have a name for it, but that becomes a part of what happens. And it's like, masking tape. If you ever had masking tape before and played around with kids or whatever, I used to do this when I was a youth pastor. I would take masking tape and I would, take a good stretch of it. And I'd start walking around the audience when I would talk about sex with teenagers. And I would take the masking tape and just touch it to the shoulders of whoever it was, or the sleeve of their clothes. And after a while, if you keep taking masking tape and applying it to multiple different people's outfits, you know what's going to happen to the masking tape? It loses its ability to adhere to anything. Some of us know what it's like. We have taken the masking tape of our heart and our soul so often and adhered it to so many different things that after a while, it's got so much of the different fuzz and garment and like the collateral of that person on us that it's like it has a hard time sticking now when you find someone you do want to stick with. And you're like, wait, I want to go soul to soul with you. It's like, yeah, it's really hard to do it when you've got so many other people's clutter on your soul. And nobody tells you this. Nobody's going to write a movie. Nobody's going to watch this movie. Nobody wants to hear this discussion. Like, this is not like fun. It's not, I'm going to tell you right now, it's not fun to be telling it to you. It's not easy reading. It's not poetic. It's not like, let's write a bunch of songs about it. I mean, they actually, it is poetic in my opinion. And they used to write songs about it back in the day, right? Like back in the day, the songs were like, I love my woman. Like, I'll be with her forever, right? Like Motown, man, they would tell you, boy, I love this woman. Now, it's not even like I love. We don't love you, girl. They, in fact, come out and say it. I don't love you. I ain't trying to be with you forever. This is the ultimate. And it's like, man, it's become like part of the water that we drink and the air we breathe to just throw this beautiful, precious violin out to the masses and let it get destroyed and act as if there's no long-term consequences. The reality is that a lot of us know what it's like. And single people, again, you can skip this. You don't have to have this happen. You don't have to have the stickiness of your soul become so numb, so incapable of bonding. You could keep it at the level that God had it to, so that when you are with that one person that God has for you and you are for them, that it will bond and stick forever. And it's powerful and amazing when you do it the way God created it to happen. And Paul, he continues on. He goes back to Genesis, and he says this. He quotes a verse. He says, "For it is said, the two will become one flesh." Paul literally reaches thousands of years into Abraham's writing and pulls out this phrase that God, when he created mankind, he created male and female and said the two will become one flesh. It's a powerful mystery of the soul. So wait a minute. One here is our intimacy word. You will become one. You might think I'm making a big deal out of this. You might think, come on, Pastor Chris, like it ain't that serious, man. But I think you know in your heart that sex is more than just physical. You maybe don't want to be honest about it because you don't want to stop doing what you're doing. You want to just keep having permission. You want to be in charge of these decisions, and that's fine. You can do what you want to do. I'm just here to tell you that you know, if you're honest, that sex is way more than just a physical thing. That it's way deeper and there's way more going on inside of your heart and soul. Paul goes on, "Do you not know that your bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit who is in you, whom you have received from God?" If you're a Christian in here or watching online, your body is inhabited by the Holy Spirit. If you're a Christian, if you're not today, this is not for you. But if you're a Christian and you have chosen Jesus as your way, your truth, your life, as the forgiver of your sins, access to the Heavenly Father is through that. Like if that's the story that you've chosen for your life, then the Holy Spirit lives inside of you. And this is what he says about that. You are not your own. You were bought at a price. Now that changes the conversation all of a sudden. Because Paul is writing these new people saying, look, I know you think that like you just get to do and be, but I'm here to tell you, like, if you are a follower of Jesus, you're not your own. You don't belong to you. You belong to the one who paid for you. He purchased you, and he purchased you in all of your brokenness with his life. And he died, and that price is what was paid to be able to say, you belong to me. And we choose to hand that over to him. And so how do we honor our God and manage our sexuality? How do we honor God with it? I would say that you could ask God what the best way is to honor him. And this teaching runs against a couple of beliefs that I want to talk about. Another myth I want to share with you is this, that is good for you, but not for me, because sex is just a preference. It's just a preference. That's good for you. That's cool. All this little stuff, that's fine. Whatever, but it's just a preference. And I would say that if sex was just a preference, there would be no outcome. Follow me. If you like certain art, you like certain music, if you like a certain sport, there's no outcome. It's actually more like nutrition. You eat a certain type of food, and there is a predictable outcome based upon what you've eaten. Why? Well, because it's all based upon the predictable outcome is based upon design. So your body was designed to have a certain level of nutrition, and if it gets it or doesn't get it, you will have a predictable outcome based upon that reality. So the outcome that you have with your sexual choices is predictable. The heartbreak, the confusion, the pain, the grief, the loneliness, the despair, the guilt, the shame, all of those things are predictable. So that means it's not just preference, because something actually takes place that we could pretty much predict is going to be a part of the human experience, to anyone who at least wants to be honest. So I would say this: sex is not just a matter of personal preference. Sex is a matter of divine design. It's a matter of divine design. God made it to work a certain way, and this is why there are consequences if you don't do it right. Myth number 2 that I want to talk about here for this moment is practice makes perfect. Some of you might have heard that. You got to take it for a test drive. Make sure you kick the tires, check it out, see what's going on. I want to tell you this, that it's not a sport. Okay, there is no competition. There's no trophy at the end. Some of you have thought that you need to know something about it so you don't look stupid. Let me give you some advice. Look stupid. Look stupid. You don't need to worry about that as much as you think you do. And I want to tell you this, it's not like playing a violin. You will be able to figure it out how to do it in one shot and get really good really fast. You don't need as much practice as you think you do. Brenda and I were never with each other before we got married. And I think we would both tell anyone, like, one of the best parts of our marriage and our relationship is our sex life. And we figured it out. We learned to talk. Can I tell you what makes sex really amazing between two people, as I've experienced it myself in my own marriage, and as I've learned what hasn't worked for other people, and just in my life of ministry and pastoring? I want to tell you that the myth that you need experience, that you need to practice, that you need to know how to do certain things so that you can offer the best, sexual experience to your partner, is a total lie and fabrication. Because I'm going to tell you what actually brings the deepest level of sexual fulfillment. It is not experience that the person brings to the bed. It's trust. When you trust each other, you could talk about anything. You could say anything. You could ask for anything. You could be told no to anything. You can go and do and be and ask and try and go and say, hey, what do you think? See, the reality is that the pursuit of experience erodes the ability to have real trust, that you're not comparing me to someone else. So in your pursuit of making sure you test drive it, you actually ruin the thing that would make it amazing together, which is, girl, we finna figure this thing out, me and you. I don't need no other girl teaching me. You the only professor I'm looking for. I'm the lab, girl. Get to work. To which she should reply, son, you don't know about me. Let me tell you, boy. The reality is that what trust brings to the sexual experience is what you actually really want, not experience. I wasn't looking for Brenda to have experience. In fact, the experience is what frightens us. Your past experiences don't provide trust. It provides fear and worry and numbness and comparison. And if you're single today, I don't want you to have to go through that. That's not the way God designed sex. He didn't make it that way. He made it to be something that you would explore with one person for the rest of your life, and it would be powerful and amazing, and you will figure it out, trust me. And if you got any questions, there are some people in our church that could talk to you and be honest, and you don't have to be like, oh my gosh, there's older people that have been married for years, and you could ask the questions of people you trust. See, when you trust, that's where you find the information that you need to be able to encounter the deepest level of true intimacy and true connection and true bonding. And then true fulfillment. Fulfillment is a part of it. It's not just like, I know sometimes as a guy, when I would hear like the Bible, like where people teach about the Bible, it was almost like it was always just for like this deep, it was like for women. I just want this deep emotional connection. And I just want it to be so satisfying, soul to soul, eye to eye. And I was just like, yeah. But, you know what I'm saying? Like, hey, I also want it to be the bomb too. Like I wanted to like feel amazing. I want it to be fulfilling. And it is all of it. God knew how to make it so that the man and the woman would be totally fulfilled. And when we do it in the divine design that he created, it is unlike anything else you will ever experience. I want you to write this down. Truth is this: romance in marriage is fueled by exclusivity. Romance in marriage is fueled by exclusivity. Not a skill that you've developed. It says this: I have waited for you. And we will figure this out together. Exclusivity, me and you, 1 + 1 forever. That's what God's design is, 1 + 1 forever. It says, I only have eyes for you. It says, I am able to give all of me, my mind, my body, my soul. And I could give to all of you, which does sound a little bit like a John Legend song, but you know what I'm saying. That's what fuels romance and marriage. Not the skill, not the experience. That doesn't fuel romance and trust and connection. No. The exclusivity is what does it. And if that is true, what would you expect God to say about sex? Go practice a lot and flip the switch and be committed once you get married? That's not possible. That's not the way it works. If you're single today, I want to give you two things to do. Number one, I want you to determine the story you want to tell. Write that down if you're single. Write that down somewhere. You can look at it again tonight, tomorrow, this week. Determine the story you want to tell. What does that mean? Well, at some point, when you meet somebody you want to marry, you will have a story to tell. And you can determine that story now and live in such a way that you will be able to tell that story. Because everybody has a story to tell, and many people lie about it. Let's decide now what your story will be that you can tell someday. Decide to live the story that you one day want to hear from the person you're going to marry. What story do you want that to be if you're single? You want that story to be someone who felt like, in order to be the best husband or wife for you, I had to go make sure I had a bunch of different memories with a bunch of different people that I'll never talk to again, but somehow my soul is still impacted by the moments I shared? Is that what you want their story to be? Or do you want their story to be, I believe that one day God would bring you to me, and I waited for you, and I knew that me and you together, if we trusted each other, and we were honest together, and we learned to communicate and use our words to talk and share and be open and honest with the help of the community around us, you and I, we could figure this thing out. We would do it together, and we would know and explore all that God has for us together. See, that's the story I think most of us, deep in our heart, we want that type of promise. We want that type of connection. We want that type of covenant relationship that's just like, wait, it's like total security, total trust, total fulfillment. And it's incredible what happens when you actually interview married couples that have been married for over 50 years. Do you know that what you are looking at when you have a climax, sexually speaking, you emotionally have all these emotions that bond you to that person, which is obviously in line with what Scripture says, which is not just physical. Like you become one. Like something happens that's at a deeper level than just physical body. Your soul is tied and glued together. This is why they've interviewed people. It's fascinating. People have been married for 50 years. Their bodies don't look like they did when they got married. They're older. They're in their 50s and 60s, and they ask them, like, are you still turned on by the idea and the sight of the person you're married, even though their body looks so much different? And it's like, absolutely, yes. And they're able to, why is that? Why is something that looks so much different and older and not like it used to could still be such an exciting part? Why? Well, because they developed such a deep and powerful bond, 1 + 1, forever. And it allowed this bond to cement that you can consistently be able to be excited about the idea of this person that your soul is energized by and through. The second thing is to decide ahead of time what honoring God with your body looks like. And I'll close with this thought. You got to decide ahead of time what honoring God with your body looks like. What does it look like to you? Because if you just think, well, I'll just figure it out in the moment. No, you won't. No, you won't. And someone else's values will figure it out for you. You'll end up going with the flow on something you're like, I don't know, this isn't what I ever wanted. It's not where I grew up believing. It's not what I hope my end of my story would be. I didn't want to tell the story to my future husband or my future wife, but I don't know. It just went. No, you got to decide way before you get in the moment what your story needs to be and what you will do with your body and what you will not do with your body. I made that decision when I was, my late teens, my early 20s. I made a decision of what I would and would not do. And I was like, look, why? And somebody was like, well, it's because you have to, it's such a sacrifice. Yeah, it's a sacrifice, I guess, but it's the same like with budgeting your money. There are certain people that look at money and saving their money like it's a sacrifice. And then there's other people that look at saving their money like it's an investment. You have to determine which one you want to be. Are you sacrificing, I just want to always spend my money and do what I want to bring myself this momentary pleasure and fulfillment? Or are you an investor and says, oh, no, I want the fulfillment. I just want it later, and I want more of it later. I want to be able to invest so I can have something. I'm not living check to check. This is the same thing you do with your sexual experience in your own body. And you say, what will I invest the future of my body into? Will I just give my body away and just like, or am I sacrificing? No, it's like, you're not sacrificing. You're investing into the most important relationship this side of heaven that you'll ever have. What a gift to be able to give to that person. To say like, I did, I waited, I believed that we could figure this out, that we'd work. And it doesn't mean that there's no conversations and you don't have to figure it out and that there's no conflict. But guess what? That's what makes relationships powerful and beautiful, is that you can work through the tough stuff together because there's trust. And you trust when you say, I trust God's way is going to work for me. And I trust that if I do not desensitize myself to multiple partners, that we'll gel together and we'll work together. And in our life, it will be amazing for us. When temptation comes and you can have a standard that you've set, a budget as it would be of what you will and will not invest your body into, give your body to, what you won't spend your moments of your body with, then it makes it different. And as you have just heard, our sexuality, I hope for the rest of your life, you'll be able to say this, that your sexuality is more than just physical, that it is a deep mystery, a profound power, and it involves our souls. And there is a profound need to deal with past regrets and get support and gain strength for the future for you. And so I'm not unaware of the reality today that I've spoke mostly to single people. If you're single, most of the time when we talk about sex in the church, you come thinking they're going to tell married people like, you know, what to think about. And we do that often. And today I thought it was important that married people, you know what, today it wasn't so much as it was for you, as it was for the people in our community that are single. But I do think that the reality is before us, that some of us have made some sexual choices that have brought exactly what the Bible says and teaches it will do. And this is the other part that's in the Bible too, is that God can't help us with those things. I don't think you can erase those things in terms of like, did they happen? They're always going to be part of your story, but you can manage them. You can get grace. You could be forgiven. You don't have to stay guilty. You don't have to stay ashamed. You don't have to stay afraid. You don't have to live in lack of trust. You can pursue those things. God can renew what you broke, and he wants to. And it is scary, and it is profound, and everything you feel about the inhibition of like, oh God, I don't know. All of that is how you know that it's so much more than physical. It's because even the idea of healing and walking through it and talking with your partner about the different things, it's scary. You don't have to do that alone. I want to pray for you today.